Hi, I'm Toni, and this is part 5 of a book that John Lennon said was his favorite book about the Beatles, and it's called Love Me Do. It was written between 1963 and 1964. On my last reading, we were in Cambridge, United Kingdom. Now we're going up to York. York is a 2,000-year-old city. I thought I'd just share a few pictures of York so you can see the kinds of things that the Beatles saw when they were touring England. If you want to learn more about York, just Google it. I found some wonderful history there. It has Viking history. How cool is that? This is such an old country to an American like me. Americans are fascinated by this. And it has medieval history up in York. But unfortunately, when the Beatles were out and about, or as they say in Canada, out and about, they didn't get to see much of these towns because they were literally, as I'm reading, you can see they were just going from the car to a press conference, to get something to eat, to their rooms, to their dressing rooms, and on stage. And York is where Kit Kat was invented. You like Kit Kat bars? I do. Who knew? I might have thought that was an American thing. But it's kind of sad when you think about it, that the Beatles didn't really get to see all these places. I mean, I have a better chance of seeing them going around with my husband than they did at the time, just rushing and rushing and rushing, and that's why they got so tired. It's actually an old Roman town, an old Roman city, long before the Norman conquest. All right, so that's where we are today with the Beatles. In 1963, we are in York, and we're going to spend a lot of time in their hotel room. Welcome to my channel. I'm Toni. Again, this book is called Love Me Do. All right, it just starts off like this, so I'm going to start off like it starts off. Apparently, they arrive in York. That evening in the dressing room of the cinema in York, 2 girls came in to interview the Fab Four. They said they wanted the interview so they could make a tape of it for a third girl who is ill in hospital. John sat in a corner away from the group. It's probably just an excuse to get into our dressing room, he says. Anyway, John says, women should be obscene and not heard. Typical John. Paul says, switch it on now, loves. Conducting the interview for the bewildered girls. What's your name? Paul asks Ringo. And Ringo says, John. Then he asks the girls their names. Daphne and Eileen. The girls ask, did you like Germany when you were there? One of the girls' names is Eileen. We liked it fine, says Paul. It was hard work, says Ringo. Yeah, says George. All during the interview, the Beatles are signing autograph books that have been sent to their dressing rooms. And when they aren't actually answering the girls' questions, they read letters from fans. The girls walk over to John. How do you write the songs? Says the girl whose name is Daphne. John doesn't answer. Paul shouts across the room in a voice you use to an errant child. Tell us about the songs, John. Tell us about the songs. John says, sometimes we write together. sometimes not. Some of them take 4 hours. Some of them take 20 minutes to write. Some have been known to take as long as 3 weeks. What's your favorite song that you've written? Paul says, I think it's Glad All Over. That was a joke, because that was really a Dave Clark 5 song, written by Dave Clark and Mike Smith. By the way, I'm reading to you from an original book. Paul says, I'm only joking. I think right now it's I Want to Hold Your Hand. They wrap up the recording session. Oh dear, says Daphne. It doesn't seem to have been recording. Sorry about that. Two hours before the first show in York, the crowd was queuing beneath the theater marquee that read, Bingo every night except Thursday. 15 minutes before the performance, the doors were opened. Inside, the compere asks, Do you want to see John? Screams. George screams. Paul screams. Ringo. Pandemonium. They appear, and all during their act, a man in a dinner jacket stands in front of the stage, looking bewildered. The girls wave, hold up pictures, and scream. The man continues to look bewildered. After twist and shout, the screaming rises, then stops dead for the Queen. I suppose they mean the national anthem. But as soon as this dies out, the screaming starts again. Paul runs off stage shouting, Oh my God, my ulcer. Nell, do you have a ciggy? Neil Aspinall alternately hands him a cigarette and leads him to the stage door, where there is a car waiting to take them to their hotel. Immediately after the Austin comes, a Jaguar driven by tour promoter Arthur Hose pulls up. He is a leading concert promoter, or he was a leading concert promoter in the UK. He is short, and he's an intense man with a crew cut. He is wearing a coat made out of snakeskin. Two girls who work for Boyfriend, a teenage fan magazine, are also in the car. The photographer is a tall, wrangly girl called Fiona Adams. A reporter is a redhead called Maureen Grady. Miss Grady is explaining to Howes how she doesn't take notes when interviewing the Beatles. It's really that I just know them so well, I know just what they're going to say anyway, so I just try to listen to the way they say it. At the hotel, the two girls and Hose are did I say Hose or House? I don't know how to pronounce it. Are joined by several other people at a table in the lobby where they are having a drink. House says, I wish I was back in London. There's nothing more boring than an English hotel lounge. But I want the boys, the Beatles, to know that I care, that I'm more than someone who just pays their wages. So now we know a bit more about this Arthur Howes. I just checked with my English husband, and it is pronounced House. He was a big concert promoter back in the day. Okay, the Beatles are back in their hotel room, and the whole time the radio is playing pop records, popular tunes of the time, and they start talking about their forthcoming appearance in America. They decide that they will not be successful. After all, says John, Cliff went over there and he died. He was 14th on the bill with Frankie Avalon, and George said that Summer Holiday, which was a film, was a second feature at a drive-in in St. Louis. Well, I'm an American, and I can tell you, second feature at a drive-in wasn't very good. So Cliff Richards didn't do as well as he would have hoped in the U.S., and so they were basing their ideas on what happened to Cliff. Little did they know. While I'm thinking about it, I don't intend this channel to be totally about the Beatles. I'm an Alzheimer's carer, and I only have so much time, so I'm just starting off this way. I will read to you about the Beatles from these various interesting books on Sundays and Thursdays. Then, as my husband and I have time, we will be doing other interesting videos. We're going to go out and about with our new camera and see some of the sights. There's a lot of interesting rock and roll sites and various movie stars and people like that that live around here. And we will get out there as soon as we can, but it's very difficult as Alzheimer's carers. Back to the book. All right, the boys are sitting in their in their hotel rooms, and they chat about the city of Liverpool. A little bit chit-chat. So I thought I'd share some pictures of my own. This is my husband in front of John Lennon's house. The other picture was me near Ringo's. This is one of Paul's houses out on the Wirral. This is a pub that John used to go with his uncle into. It's right on the corner where he lives. This is obviously Liverpool. Uh-oh, here comes my little dog. She's bound to get in my way here. But there's nothing I can do. She's my co-producer. This is the Liver Building in Liverpool. There's 3 buildings, and they call them the 3 Graces. And the boys are talking about how there was a class system in those days. They were talking about philosophy and how they grew up and so forth. These are the statues of them in Liverpool. They're much bigger than real life humans. We took this picture. I can't think of the name of the building. Here's Penny Lane. What do you want, doggy? It's fascinating to see these places. That's the Liverpool Museum on the left, that white building, that modern one. If you know the show Bread, this is the Bread Street. And here's my husband in front of Paul McCartney's last home that he lived in with his family, his mother, father, and his brother. This is Lark Lane. There's a lot of fun things going on Lark Lane. This is my friend. He put on, I don't know what he did, some kind of a mask or something. These are the Albert Docks. Something to see. They used to be warehouses, but they've turned them into all kinds of modern things now. Liverpool's a port. Here's Matthew Street where the original cavern used to be, and now a remake of the cavern on the other side of the street. It's more like an alley. It's so narrow. It must be ancient. Liverpool's an ancient city. This is the Empire Theater in Liverpool. And the Fab Four, their parents all came up to see him in here. It's a very old theater. I've been there to see a play. The boys continue to converse about different topics, and they even get a little philosophical. They feel that the world might be a little prejudiced against them because they're from Liverpool. John says, we're definitely fighting a prejudice. Paul goes on to say, that's why I'm interested in John getting out his book. It's just showing that we can do something different, as if one of us wrote a musical. People will get rid of their prejudices and stop thinking that pop people can only sing or go into a dance routine. May I interject? Perhaps they're thinking of Cliff Richards and the Shadows with their little dance moves. We don't want to learn how to dance or take elocution lessons. We don't want to learn how to tap dance. Now they go on to talk about idols. They start to talk about idols and whether they have to have sex appeal. John said that Bill Haley was the first person to sing rock and roll, but that he was too old to appeal to the girls that Elvis appealed to. After all, said Paul, a young girl just couldn't see herself married to Bill Haley. May I now take a moment to thank you so much for being here. Please like this video if you're enjoying it, that is, and subscribe so that you can catch my next ones. Okay? Thank you so much. The boys continue talking. Paul goes on to tell a story that some woman came up to the car. She'd never go up to just anybody, Paul says, in the street and kiss them. I mean, she was about 40. She just started talking to me, and then she suddenly grabbed hold of me and kissed me. I mean, I was definitely embarrassed. Oh, to be a Beatle. Paul goes on to say, we never like to talk to teenage magazines. They just make it up. They change what we say. I think they prefer it that way. Modern day lingo, fake news. Now we hear a little bit something from Ringo. We haven't been hearing from Ringo and George very much. John asks Ringo, why don't you ever say anything except, I'm the drummer? I don't like talking, says Ringo. It's how I'm built. Some people gab all day, and some people play at smoggo. Whatever that means. I don't mind talking and smiling. It's just that I don't do it very much. I haven't got a smiling face, and I haven't got a talking mouth. So, before the boys go to bed that night, John asks for one more ciggy. One more ciggy, says John, and then I'm going to hit the sack. Hit the sack. That's an American thing that they picked up from someone called Gary Coople. So that's where I'm going to end the video for tonight. In York, we spend more time with them in their dressing rooms and in their hotel rooms. We learned that people were queuing up in front of the cinema. And when Paul was on stage, he had to run off because his ulcer was bothering him. And so Neil Aspinall, who they call Nell, gave him a cigarette. We learned a little bit about this Arthur Howes, who was a leading concert promoter in the UK. So he was helping them get all around the UK in connection with Brian Epstein in the early 60s before they hit the US. We learned that the radio is basically on all the time. We learned that they're pretty much drinking a lot of Coke and scotches. Let me not forget those young girls. John wasn't too nice to them, and neither were George or Ringo. They didn't even talk to her. The only one that was really kind of nice was Paul. Although John did talk to them once Paul kind of gave him the look. They spoke about what a pop idol should look like, and Bill Haley probably wasn't it. Didn't have the it factor. We learned that some random woman came up and kissed Paul, which probably has happened a million times by now. We learned that while they sit around in their hotel rooms, they talk about philosophical topics. They dream of the future. And then finally, they kind of give it to Ringo a little bit. Why doesn't Ringo speak much? Well, Ringo just says, I don't have a talking mouth. Hey, ask a stupid question, get a silly answer, right? All right. Again, if you liked this, comment below. Introduce yourself. Put a little heart or a little smiley face. Subscribe, and if you know a Beatles fan, maybe share it with them. Have a great autumn. The leaves have all changed colors now. This is a picture of my hometown in Chicago. So from my little dog Luna, who is my co-producer, and myself, we want to wish you a good night, and I will be putting up another Beatle reading on Sunday. Okay? Take good care. In the meantime, I'm going to try and find something else you're going to like. Bye.